Middle managers are at the heart of any camp, driving everything from bottom line performance to culture to development of future staff. Because of their unique position, research shows that developing middle managers can improve your entire organization's health and set a positive tone in your culture. But how do we develop and train them well? Let's talk about it.
You don't lead camp because you love the office. Ultra Camp has everything you need to manage your program so you can spend more time doing what you love. Manage staff, register campers, take payments, and direct communication all in one place.
Welcome to Camp Code, podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We have seen a lot of changes in our industry over the last 10 years since our podcasting adventure first began. The landscape certainly looks very different as we head into the 2023 camp season, and yet the importance of a well thought out staff training remains the same. This season, we delve into new topics, new ideas for skill development, coping strategies, and ways to support our staff to bring their very best. Yes, the what has certainly changed in the last 10 years, but the why remains the same. And before we dive into our topic, we're going to do a round of introductions. So Beth, please start us off, please.
Absolutely. I'm Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a camp consultant and trainer. And as a camp director, I was the person who loved planning and experiencing intentional, well thought out leadership training.
Perfect. And Gabrielle.
And my name is Gabrielle Royale. I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Waro. Camp Waro is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada, and we focus on creating a positive environment for gender minorities. And my pronouns are she and her.
Amazing. And I'm Ruby Compton. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Chief Exploration Officer for Ruby Outdoors. I run a consulting and training company for camps and outdoor programs, and I'm based in Western North Carolina in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where we might get some snow today. Very exciting.
You can have ours if you like.
I know.
I like it.
We don't have very much, actually. It only snowed overnight. We've been green since Boxing Day. So,
oh gosh,
Boxing Day is the day after Christmas for those of you who aren't British or Canadian or possibly Australian. Anyway.
Oh, goodness. Well, today's topic is not the weather. It is about training middle management. And yes. We have been spending some time talking to directors in the last couple months, and this idea of middle management and how to provide the best training and kind of being stuck as a middle manager as well. Some of the funny positions they find themselves in just kept coming up. So we're going to talk about it today. And as we jump in today, I'm actually going to start it off with Beth. So Beth, I would love if you could just start off and tell first our listeners, what do you define as middle management when I use that term?
Great. So for me, in my experience, I've worked with a lot of camps that are director or two directors only as the only year-round staff, and they don't have other staff that work with them 12 months of the year, maybe only 4 months or 5 months. And so for us, middle management would be those folks below the directors. So they in a camp's hierarchy who are no longer counseling, who are creating programs, who are supervising other staff, likely running an LIT program, things like that.
Perfect. Gabrielle, in any ways that your definition is different or anything you would add to that?
Nope. Sounds good to me. I think it's they're not the ultimate boss, but they have people that they're supervising.
Yeah. And I would say, yeah, they're squarely in the middle. And the area that I'm in, I would say there's a lot of private camps that, and even on several of the nonprofit and agency camps that have kind of like the executive director or the owner level. And then there are other year-round folks who are usually younger, I would say anywhere from the like 22 to 45 age range, and are year-round folks, but find themselves kind of, again, stuck in the middle of having some authority, but not all the authority, and still supervising. And to a lot of folks, they are the person in charge, but they're not like the person in charge. So that's the population we're talking about. We know every camp is set up a little bit different, but probably everyone has somebody who get stuck in the middle a little bit. So let's start off with you, Beth. What are a couple of ideas or places that you would start with when you're thinking about training for those middle management folks?
First of all, I think I'd just like to say that this is really a big struggle for many of us. Training our folks who may no longer be on the front line with the campers, but who now fill the responsibilities between us, who may be the directors or assistant directors, and the camp counselors. These are the staff with usually more experience. And so often we assume that they're fully prepared to take on all these new responsibilities without much training, as much training as they required when they were first year staff or second year staff. And for me, it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, these folks, in order to have their best experiences and offer our camps their best in return, need a lot of training and support. So as always, for me, we start with the end in mind. What do you want from your middle management team? What do you need them to be able to do? Many of these skills will be similar across all camps, but of course, some will be specific just to your camp. So what do you want them to be able to do really well? What have been some of the struggles of past middle management teams? Kind of creating these lists, I think, help you figure out what you need to focus on when you're training for this coming season. You may even want to include folks who filled these roles last year in some of your information gathering. You could send out a short survey and just ask for their input. Like, if you were designing some sort of training for your job last summer, what would you want to be sure was included? Things like that. And if making the list of your expectations and what you want them to do well in their roles is pretty easy for you to come up with, then I would really recommend that you spend some time focusing on the struggles that could occur or ones that have in the past. And I think if we spend some time thinking that through, we can figure out more ways to better prepare them for the job. So, I mean, think of some of the issues that usually arise during summer camp. So they may now be supervising some of their closest friends. How is each side going to deal with that? There is a struggle when you're switching roles, when you've gone from, sort of the front lines with all the kids to something pulled back a little more office-like. They've become pretty comfortable with being with the campers, and they were probably really good at it, which is why you hired them back and gave them more responsibilities. And this struggle often creates, what I've seen anyway, is like extreme stress and some emotional challenges. So we need to help them shift from the doing, being that face of summer camp and being really hands-on with the campers, to the mindset of strategy and delegation and supervision of other people. And what kind of new skills will they need training on to make that shift easier and a more valuable experience for all of you? So when you're developing that plan for training this group of staff, so your program staff, your resource people, your area heads, maybe these are your directors and you're the executive director, whatever it happens to be for your camp, think of things like, what is your goal for these middle managers? Are they looking after staff? Are they overseeing camper development? Are they creating programs? Are they in charge of speaking to the parents? All of the above. Like, are they in charge of training other staff, evaluating them, dealing with conflicts? So once you know your goal or your goals for these people, you can then create that list of training topics and how these topics will help and support that group of staff. So a few ideas that I would think about would be conflict resolution, relationship building, communication, stress management, that mind shift from producing to leading others to do the producing. They need some personality training. They need cultural impact, which we discussed in a previous episode all about dealing with your camp culture. They need stuff on emotional intelligence or time management or creative thinking, especially if we're a summer camp, delegation, empathy, building trust, fostering diversity and inclusivity. I mean, the list just goes on, but which ones do your people for your camp need, and how can you set that up? And I would also think about adding to your list topics that will help you develop this particular group further. So think ahead to 2024 and beyond. You want folks who understand and appreciate that internal leadership development, who know and understand their roles in the whole camp machine. So we just don't want to train them for 1 year, for 1 summer. And once you've got your topics, your list, then I would make sure, of course, that you're aligning it with your competencies and your behaviors that you focus on at your camp, and of course, your mission statement. And then you can plan something for each day of staff development with this group that devotes to training a specific skill and the desired behaviors around that competency that you're looking for. So maybe you choose 6 of them that you want to focus on, or maybe you choose 5 or 8, whatever you decide. And you may choose things like, we're going to focus on communication and relationship building and time management and personality training and fostering creativity and diversity and inclusivity. Maybe that's your 6. And so have a half day on each one. You could bring in alumni to help teach specific topics, those who've done the job before, or maybe they've now gone on to do something outside of camp that deals with these kinds of things, HR or coaching or some other career, which has given them more training and experience on these issues. And this way you're spending all of that training time exactly on the behaviors that the middle management team members need to succeed. So start by thinking through what your people need most at camp, from the very, very specific to the very, very general, and go from there. Because your list won't be the same as any other camp's list.
So true. So true. All right. Well, that was a great kickoff. So yeah, we'll sign off now. No. How often do we make that joke with after Beth goes
Often.
first?
Never gets old.
Often.
I never know when to stop. That's my problem.
All right, Gabrielle, what are some of your initial thoughts here on how we train middle management and how we set them up for success?
For me, middle management, the first place to start for me is going back to our organization's mission statement, and how does the mission statement apply specifically to their job? What does that look like? And helping them have a deeper understanding of that mission statement and be able to not only understand it, but visualize it within their role. So for example, within our leadership team, I'll just say we have obviously different roles. We have section heads, CIT coordinators. We also have a site coordinator, logistics coordinator. And I'll use site coordinator as an example. Site coordinator is somebody that's making sure that the site is taken care of, that garbage recycling, et cetera, is being done. They're leading a team to do that. They're the ones that get very little thank yous. There's no comments. If there's only comments if it's not done well. If it's done well, then there's no comments. So it's hard sometimes within our mission where we're camper first. It's hard to see like what is the direct impact. We of course know logically that garbage is important to be taken out. Obviously, that's nice for everybody. But how are we contributing to a child's welfare? So for example, in that one, we look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we look that site coordinator truly takes care of the base important needs of our campers. Our unit heads are really taking care of like that third tier where it's, sense of community. Our activity coordinators are taking care of that 5th tier, which is a sense of accomplishment because they're accomplishing their activities. So it's taking your mission and framing it in a way that makes sense to their role, so that they have a point, a compass that they can always follow. And then afterwards, I like to look at also what's their vision for this role. So if it's somebody that's being promoted within your organization, they of course have an idea of, they've seen how somebody else has done the job. We all know from experience that from the outside, it's very easy to see like, I would do things differently. And so I like to hear what they would like to do differently, but I would also like to hear what they would like to keep. So what's the keep shift in that role? What are some things that you would like to adjust, and why, and how does that connect to the mission in your job? And then what are some things that you would like to keep, because perhaps that person before did certain things quite well, and we don't want to reinvent everything. And also make sure that we're continuing to do things that do work within our organization, and we're not pendulum swinging. So it can be so daunting to start in a new job. And I think if we can start with the mission and then what their vision is. If they're new to the organization, I think that is where what Beth was talking about with surveys, not only having the job description, but also having people bring forward their experience of why this role is important and what it gave to them personally, I think helps with like that connection to the role. And it helps give people at least a guiding start and where they want to go.
Brilliant. And yeah, what you all both spoke about, I want to kind of bring together as a discussion about mindset. And when I was in high school, I ran the soundboard. I did this in college too, for performances and theater and music and whatnot. And the thing about a good sound person is you don't think anything of them if things are going well, but it's when the mic pops or there's a mute or the actor forgot to turn on their microphone, which is like totally not your fault. And you can't fix it until the actor turns on their mic. Right. But everybody goes, God, come on, sound person, get it together. And that's
So
very
stressful.
much the same way it is as a supervisor at camp, that like, things that you're managing are not always things that you really had any control over, but you are still ultimately responsible for solving the problem. And so I think that idea of talking to your staff about finding the fun and finding what feels good. I've been doing a lot of yoga with Adrienne lately, but finding what feels good, and it's going to look and feel different in this role. And, it's not going to be as many like children's hugs and high fives and really personal connection to these big moments that kids are having at camp. And you get to step into this role of like being the person behind the curtain who's pulling all these magical wheels, making the magic of camp happen. And that's where it gets really cool. And when I would have staff who were like, you just make this look so easy. And I'm like, it's not, but that means I'm good at my job. So thank you.
But thank you very much. But yes, not at all easy.
And so, yeah, I think that taking that time in interviews to talk to folks who are in that middle management role, and I think along with that, hand in hand with that, goes that the pace of camp feels different from being a frontline staff member to moving into that middle management role. And your days are going to be structured a little differently, and you're going to have a lot more independence. And those are all things that can be kind of hard to grasp until you're in it. But I think speaking those expectations and bringing those forward, and then providing support as folks who are coming into that middle management role struggle with, like, I don't know how to supervise my friends. Well, I know we talked about it during training, but like, let's sit down and talk about it some more.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to like make all the problems go away. And I don't know how to not get defensive about things that were not my fault. Like, all of those are really common things that we have to be ready to work with our middle management on.
Absolutely.
Right on. Cool. We're going to pause for a moment, take a break, and hear from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll share some more ideas for training middle management at camp. Exclusive to Camp Code listeners, you can download Ultra Camp's free guide, 5 unique ways to connect with campers outside of camp, by visiting ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. And if you ever feel like you spend so much time in the office that you've got no time left for camp, well, at Ultra Camp, they know that you didn't get into camping to do paperwork. So they created software to help camp professionals like yourself handle camp registration quickly and efficiently. They offer powerful tools that put you in control of your information. You can automate your billing, create custom reports, manage your hiring process. That also includes integrated background checks, and you can communicate with your customers and donors while adding in the efficiency of automation. You have a platform that you can put to work for you. Ultra Camp's goal is to provide resources so their clients can spend more time in camp doing what they do best. If all this doesn't sound like your registration software, don't you think it should? Visit their website, ultracampmanagement.com/campcode, and set up a time to chat. They look forward to meeting with you. All right, let's keep talking. And I didn't mention at the beginning of the episode, but there's going to be a part 2 to this episode because this is a massive topic. So never fear if you're like, oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. Don't worry, we do too. And we're going to keep talking about them. So Beth, what are some other ideas that you have about training middle management?
Okay, so I just have a few quick tips here in this section because I'm going to save very specific training ideas for part 2 of the podcast. So I would be bringing in middle management folks early, or doing training with them if they work year round with you and they're already there before the rest of the staff arrive. So the ones that they are going to supervise, because then what you get to do is take advantage of the cascading or the transferring training from one level to the next. So this time ahead allows for you to train on, to discuss, to brainstorm the most important behaviors that you're looking for all summer. And of course, time for you to model them and your other leadership team members to model them during those first few days with your middle management people. And the cascade happens when the folks middle management will be supervising arrive, and you get to watch the transfer of knowledge as people learn and then teach what they've learned and then have an opportunity for reflection. And we've talked about the importance of this kind of valuable tool many times, but just bring them in early and have some separate time. Another tip I would say is whenever it's appropriate to divide folks into groups for training sessions, ask yourself if this would be a good time for middle management people to be together. So putting them in one cohort can help them discuss and apply what they're learning to their new roles, and can build, of course, trust between these fellow staff members who will then be able to support one another. And of course, you don't want to do this every time you break into groups, but certainly be conscious of it and apply it when it might be appropriate. The other thing that I would do is, prior to everyone arriving at camp, when you have just your leadership team and your middle management on site, sit them down and have them answer the following questions. And to make it interesting, I would have them answer each one in a different way. So for example, they could answer one question alone and just journaling and then pair share, or the next question could be in small groups and a small group discussion, or the next one they could answer by creating a mural that they've cut out photos from for a magazine, or they could create a short video to answer for the next one, so on. So you're going to kind of switch it up so it's different and exciting. And the idea is to get everybody on the same page, going in the same direction for the same reasons. And of course, making it interesting and enjoyable to connect with one another and get to know each other along the way. So my questions would include things like, what is the point of our camp? Why are we here? And what's our desired destination? Where are we trying to go? What results are we hoping for? What do we want staff to produce as a result of their work? What do we want to see happen to children and staff as a result of participation in our program? And finally, it would be, what benefits do we want to provide that campers are not likely to get from participation in other camps or non-camp programs? So you want to get them together and have them really think through those answers and have that discussion, because without buyout from middle management, that strategy and culture will not be put into practice. And then my last one would be to check in with each one of them individually. And Ruby talked about this a little bit already, but regularly throughout all of training, and let's be honest, through all of camp, personalized nudges will help them apply what they're learning, and it'll give you an idea of who may need more processing time or more training time in certain areas, or support in general. So be sure that even though you're creating a middle management training for the team, you also need to be able to see and hear them as individuals and make sure they are feeling seen and heard as an individual as well. So just a few little tips.
Beth, I'm so glad you said that, because I think that that's a really cool point about middle management. Like, no matter how big or small your camp staff team is, I think ideally we want to see them all as individuals, and we do, but like, we don't have time.
That's right, we don't.
But
yeah.
but your middle management folks are folks that you can invest in seeing them as individuals and giving them the training and support that they specifically need in a way that we just aren't able to scale up, depending on the size of our staff. But so yeah, I love that idea, and that little piece to remember. That's one of the things we need to think about differently with our middle management folks. And if you are a middle manager, like, asking for that from above too. Yes. Like, I'm not just a camp staff member. Like, I've invested more time and energy into being here, and I want to be here, and I want to think about these things, and I want to challenge myself. So help me do that. So
yeah. And my very first couple of years of camp directing, if you were a good, solid, decent staff member, I rarely took the time to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because I was so overwhelmed with everything else that it was like, if you were doing fine, I let you be. And I was really focused on trying to help those who weren't doing fine, until a staff member brought it to my attention that I needed to pay attention to them too, even though they were doing well. And I had to really carve out that time. Yeah,
Smart.
had to be a priority.
So awesome. All right, Gabrielle, what are some other thoughts you have about training our middle management folks?
It goes a little bit to what you were talking about before, Ruby, mindset, and also connecting with campers. How do we do that if you have a different job, et cetera, et cetera? We introduced time management to our leadership team and to our full-time staff members or part-time staff members that work throughout the year. So I think at camp, our schedules are typically, as staff members, quite scheduled, and you go from point A to point B. You know, we're not really responsible for our own times. We follow a fairly strict schedule, and that's necessary. In a middle management position, most of the time you're responsible for your own scheduling and where you go. Of course, there's certain areas, duties, et cetera, that take precedent, but for the most part. And what I found was that our staff, good intention, didn't know how to manage their time. So they might spend a lot of time on campers, behavioral issues, or they might just not know how to do something, and it would take so long that they would end up working very, very late. So I am somebody that struggles also with time management. And so I have one of our staff members who's part of now of our operations team, who leads a seminar in time management, and not just time management, but how does it look in the context of a team. So just on a practical level, we're all on Google Calendar. If you don't have a Google Calendar, we create an account with you, and we practice during our leadership team training, filling in our Google Calendar the night before and saying, okay, you have a meeting with this person, or we're doing a session, everybody put it in. Even if we're all doing it together, you put it in your Google Cal. And then if you want to set up a conversation, so for example, Ruby, if you and I want to chat during lunchtime, even though we just said, hey, at lunch, let's talk about this, we have to put it in our Google Cal. There's always backlash. There's some people that are very organized and have written journals or paper journals, and they're like, I don't need this. And so we bring it back to the idea of team. It's really important for team. But it's also important for the supervisors, such as myself, to see where people's time is being allocated. And so with that, there's always some people that will have some pushback. Typically, it's on either spectrum. It's the ones that are extremely organized or the ones that aren't organized at all. But it has made such a difference. And now it's made a difference with our offsite team, which we now have more offsite part-time members. I can go onto their Google Calendar, their classes are. I see when they're doing interviews. I have access to all of my leadership team's calendars, and they're still using this method. So I would really look at that. And in there, one of the things that Heidi talks about is if your Google Calendar is booked from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. at night, this is not a realistic calendar. So where's your buffer time? And where is, as you were mentioning, Ruby, your fun time, your connection with camper time? And not, oh, because there's issues. No, like you're, walking through the woods, getting to the dining room, or you're on the bus singing songs, whatever brings you joy. So part of it is, it's also about making sure that your time is valued, that you're able to have a shower, that you can have a nap, these type of things we're trying to put in. So we do that during our training, and we do it during staff training, and we support them during the summer to do this so that it's more efficient, and we can see, we're just a better team because of it. But you can get lost in your first year when you have to manage your own time, go from complete structure to much looser structure with no guidance.
Okay, I love that. And what that sparked for me is that very real difference between I am a frontline staff member. I have a schedule that's been handed to me. I have one place that I am responsible for being, and a very clear set of responsibilities. Shift to a middle management role or any kind of supervisor role, probably at any given time, there are 3 different places that you could be on camp that would be totally appropriate and reasonable, and would be delighted for you to be there. And you cannot be at all 3 places at the same time. And so you have to learn how to make those choices. And I think that a word that you all have been throwing around that we haven't specifically called out as much today yet is just trust, right? It is, How do you have the folks who are above you trust you? Because that's a really key part to having your summer be smooth or your job be smooth if it's your year-round job. And how do you get the people that you supervise to trust you? And it's really simple in that trust is very much like our night vision, that it takes a long time to build up and a very quick moment to break and go away.
Oh, wow.
That's
so true.
Right? Yeah. This was an insight I had on a night hike I did the other night. I was like, oh, this is a neat little chai there. So thanks for letting me bring that back in. But one of the biggest indicators of trust and ways to build trust is doing the things you say you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I think if there's any skill that you teach your middle management, or if there's any skill that you as a middle manager focus on, it is when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And we know camp is unpredictable. Stuff happens. If for some reason you get pulled away and you can't go do the thing you were supposed to do, making sure you're following up with the appropriate people. And anybody who's in a middle management role, some significant portion of your job is to communicate. And so don't think about a big part of your job being planning program or managing staff or, moving all of these things from here to there. Like those are all part of your job, but really, truly, a much bigger portion is communicating those tasks, getting them done, that you've done them, where things go. Like it all comes down to communication. So I think if you start with those really key building blocks of trust and communication and doing the things you say you're going to do and communicating that I'm going to do this thing. Hey, I did this thing. That's going to go a long way for folks to see you as a valuable person in your position, or doing your job well, I guess I should say. Cool. Any other thoughts that folks want to add before we round out this episode?
I think that I would take time during staff training to train the staff being supervised. So I would get them to sit in small groups and come up with all the ways they would want people who were supervised by them to behave, to respond, to act, and so on. And then in a large group, I would share the responses and make lists or draw pictures of whatever we're saying, whatever works for you, but discuss some of the points that they've given by asking questions and getting folks to really fully think through the answers. And then, of course, you can let them know that this is what you hope you will see in their behaviors with their new supervisors, so your middle management team. And now is the time for discussion from this group about any issues that they can foresee happening when they are supervised by their friends, any advice they would like to give to new middle management people. And I would record these and pass the information along. So this goes back to Ruby's open line of communication. But if we do that from both sides and front load and take a bit of time to think about things from the other group's point of view, you're always going to have a more beneficial situation up front. So don't just train the middle management about middle management, train all your staff about each other's roles. And I think that that'll help too.
Yep. If you're not watching us, Gabs and I are both wide-eyed and snaps, and yes.
We're saying yes. It's so important.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's that time. Gabrielle,
yes.
Can you recap this episode for us?
Yes. Recap. So many great things. And I just want to say that this is a massive, massive subject. As we were speaking, I was thinking, we can talk about this. We can talk about this. This is absolutely huge. So let's break it down into a couple of categories that you can try to focus on.
Maybe we have 3 episodes. Who knows?
I honestly probably
we'll see.
Rest of our series, so let's break it down into a couple of categories. First and foremost, we want to start with the individual, right? Who is the individual coming in to this role, and how do they connect with your organization, and what is that mission of your organization? In that piece, we want to help them reframe how they are looking at their role and their organization. And we want them to put their little stamp on it, like what is something that they want to add into this role? What are some things that they want to keep? One of the ways to talk about missions, which I really loved what Beth was saying, is ask specific questions such as, what is the point of, why are we here? What's the type of impact that we want to have on our staff members and our campers? Rewind to listen to those questions, because I think it links right into into mission. And as we're talking about mission, we're looking also in the impact that we have with our community. So how are we going to help with these middle management individuals build community, but also gain some confidence? So one of the things that you can do is have cascade training, starting off with them learning certain things, passing it on to staff members, practicing their leadership, and also helping them to understand in their new role, if we look at their schedule, how do they have that mindset of still connecting with campers and also doing this new job that they're looking at. Expectations is always key when we are setting our middle management staff up for success. And we want to check in again with that individual, make sure that we have time to help them process their new learning curve. At the end of the day, it is a different point of view from the organization. So you can take what you do typically with your staff members, adjust it and tweak it for those middle management individuals, because they're looking at camp from a different place, but they already have a baseline. So might as well go with them on that. This is a topic that has so many different directions that you can go towards. But if you start with the expectations with the individual, setting them up with success, with connecting them with the mission, and letting them know that you see them as a person, I think it's a good start to your season.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. As always, you did a great job bringing it all together. So smart.
Thanks.
We would love for you to get involved with the podcast. You can tell us your thoughts on this episode by using the hashtag camp code. You can also tell us what topics you'd like for us to discuss, any guests that you recommend we have on the show, and any great leadership training tips you have to share. We would love to hear from you because we are all about sharing in this industry. Also, if you have found this podcast to be useful, you can leave a rating and review for us in your podcasting app. Your feedback helps keep the show going, and it also helps other folks find this show who are looking for it. If you would like to get in touch with us, we're going to tell you how. So Beth, how can folks reach you?
You can email me directly at beth@gocamp.pro or visit our website, gocamp.pro. And I'm on Twitter at Topaz.
And Gabrielle?
You can email me at info@waro.com, ouareau.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Gabrielle Rail. Rail takes 2 L's.
And you can email me, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at rubyoutdoors. For our next podcast, I know you're all going to be really surprised, but we're going to do part 2, part 2 of 3, maybe. I don't know. We'll see, but at least part 2 of this topic of training middle management. So we're going to talk more. If you enjoyed today's conversation, definitely tune in to the next episode. Our final segment on each podcast is a best practice for leadership training, and we would love to hear some of your most memorable moments or most effective tips. And you can tell us what they are using the hashtag camp code, and you might get featured here on the show. But this week's best practice comes from Beth.
So middle managers face a constant barrage of opposing agendas, conflicting people, and contradicting expectations. They're in the very middle of the flow of all the information. So they're at once strategic and highly tactical. And they have to be skilled at leading up, leading down, and leading across. So I think you need to spend a lot of time during training and even before they get to camp, teaching middle management about the importance of connection. And you can only inspire folks that you've taken the time to make connections with. Ample focus has to be given to relationship building if they want to succeed in this new role. So this group of people really needs to understand the concept of caring for the people under them. And if you can't see me, I'm making air quotes because we don't want to use that, but in the hierarchy of how camp works, they're under them. So for me, I always did some type of training session with my middle management team about servant leadership. And the idea that you are not above those who report to you, but rather that you are below those who report to you. So instead of looking down on them in that hierarchy of a camp chart, flip the chart upside down so that all those above you are now the people in your care. So as a middle management person, you are carrying these people, you are cradling them, you are supporting them. And this idea is just a switch of mindset, but it can hold the key to really putting middle management in the right headspace to do their job well. So I talked about this years ago at Waro with staff members. And I can still remember a young woman named Candace who was going to be on Gab's middle management team, maybe leadership team that year. And she came up to me after the session and she just looked at me and she said, I am not above these people. I am below these people. I am caring for them. They are
Yes.
my responsibility, my
Yes.
purpose, my cause. And so she told me later that fall that throughout the summer, whenever she was having an issue with a staff member, she would stop and she would go like this. So if you can't see me, she would change her hands from this position where she's looking down on the staff that she's supervising to cradling her hands together like this. And these were the people in her care.
Yes.
So she would
Yeah.
stop and go, okay. And it helped her to move into this mindset of how do I help them? What can I best do to support them? So teach your middle management staff that when you care, you'll connect. When you connect, they'll care. And when they care, they'll commit. So you really want to spend a lot of time thinking about these are the people in your care and how are you going to look after them?
That's so wonderful.
Genius.
And I really remember that. And I remember it made a big impact for Candace, and she was very kind and caring with her team. And it was a great visual.
Amazing. And on that amazing note, Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. You can check out all our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. There are 7 podcasts in all, each with a different focus to help as many camp folks as we can. Give them a listen. From all of us here at Camp Code, thanks for the listening, friends.